This is part 3 of my Gmax tutorial making a 060S saddle tank for the Great Western Railway, dated to about the 1890s. And just before I go on to the actual modelling in Gmax, I just want to show you the textures which I was working with. I created the texture for the saddle tank itself, which if you've seen the other two parts of this, the first two parts of this tutorial, you'll see that there's a green area which I've created, and then I created the rivets. These are all in a drawing program, and I pasted a layer of this on top and then altered the and did the drop shadow. But what I realized, of course, was that the so I just reduce this one down to 2 colors, and then I'll copy it and paste it as a new layer on top. And what I realized, of course, was that the shadow was going off to one side, so therefore when I put this texture on both sides of the saddle tank, the shadow would be going always to the right, so towards the cab on the left hand side, and to the smoke box on the right hand side. So that was no good, so I had to alter the shadow, and I just did that by first of all I deleted all the white, then I reversed the selection and I added a drop shadow under 3D effects. So this is in PaintShop Pro, but I'm sure it's pretty much the same in PowerPoint. And what I actually did is I put a shadow on the horizontal slightly to the left, okay, and then I deleted the black, and then I pasted another layer, and this time, having deleted the white, I then added a 3D effect, again, but this time you just see it there, no, because I haven't selected the, there we are, and then drop shadow. So on this side it's over to the left, so over here you can see that's before and after, and over here then it's to the right, so, and then I delete that, and that gives me a uniform shadow with a little bit to the left, a little bit to the right, but all down from below. And if I close that and zoom in a bit, you can see the effect is going to be what I'm after. Well, having done that, this is, and then reduce this to 512 by what was it, 256 pixels. I decided that was far too big anyway, and I like to keep textures as small as possible, and I realised I only needed thin slices of this because of all those faces on the saddle tank. So this is what I ended up with. This is at 3 times the size it will be seen on the model, 3:1 there, and I've just got a slice there of that horizontal join, and then some of the vertical join. So if I take that back there, and that makes a much smaller texture, which means less hit on my PC and everybody else's, I hope. So let's go into Gmax, and you'll see here that I've now applied that to the saddle tank, and this was a long process. If we go into Wireframe, basically what I had to do is select every single face independently, and to make sure that I got the correct distribution of rivets and extensions. If I just select that item, that mesh, and if I just go back to smooth and highlights, select a face, so there we are, there's one of the faces selected. And if I go into edit and just show that, and you'll notice there that it's got a slight reflection on it, it's got a 5% reflection, and you can see there how I've used this texture, and I've extended it out to 3.5 because I want 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, so we're at 5 and 3.5, or just in fact we're at not at 0.5, we're at 0.496 out to 3.5. And then vertically I just wanted that slice, as it were, repeated, So it's just 2 rivets, and these are set at 1 for the vertical height, and here at 751. And so I experimented until I got one of these right, and then I applied that all across the tank, and it's a slow, laborious process, but well worth doing. I do appreciate that there must have been some sort of rivet joint here, here, and here, but I'm not going to attempt to do that, because it'll be largely hidden by the fittings of the chimney, the tank filler, the dome, and the dome, etc., along the top of the saddle tank. So I felt that was an adequate level of detail. So I'm just going to close this. So that I'm just left with Gmax open. I like to keep tidy, sort of work tidy as tidy as I can. Okay, so there we are. So I think that's quite successful. That's given us the saddle tank, which was perhaps one of the more varied types of shapes that we have to make for this locomotive. Some of the pieces I'm going to use, I'm going to import from other models. There's no point in making things again if you've already created, for example, springs that are of the correct size. You might as well import them into your model. But now what I want to do is to have a look at the wheels. That's always my next, or often my first part of the model, and I like to get these right from the start. Now you see here on the plan we've got some information. We've got a 4 foot 7.5 diameter. That's to the tyre that goes right down to the 0. and we've got 14 spokes, which is not going to make life particularly easy. So the first thing I want to do is make a cylinder first of all. I tend to start, this is just going to be a guide for me, 4 foot 6, and let's make sure I've got the right measurement again, just to remind myself. 4 foot 7.5 is 2 foot 3 3/4. 2 foot 3.75 should bring us down. So, and that's how high this should be, 3.75 from there. And if we just drag it along, we should get an idea that we're in the right ballpark, that the plan is actually correct. So I like to use the circle there, or anything circular, just to double check that. And that looks okay. So by making this circular mesh there, just a coarse circular mesh, I'm not too worried about its that it's got 5 height segments or anything. I'm not going to use it. It's just more of a guide. It's also got 18 sides, which tends to make it look a little bit clunky. But it means I've got the, by checking that, it means I've got the plan correct. And I see here actually that mesh, which I stretched out there, I extruded it by 18. I think it should be 18.6. There we are. That's better. And so that's my, with all the texturing. Okay, right, now what about the wheels? Well, the wheels definitely need to be 4 foot 7.5 diameter, which we know is 2 foot 3.75, 3 3/4 inches in radius. And we're going to make these as a tube. So I just create a tube. Not really worried about its details just yet. Actual details of its height, depth and everything. Well, actually what I will do is I'll make the height about 6 inches. That's actually the depth of the tube. And we don't need all those height segments, so we take it down to 1. Height segments would be, where are we? Would be slices through the mesh. If I put that into wireframe, you'll see there's a lot of that circular mesh has got 5 height meshes there. height segments. And if I was to put 5 height segments in there, well, that's a whole load of polys that we just don't need. So we take it back to that, and let's go back to where we were. So I'm just going to get the basics of the wheel sorted out. So the external diameter, or radius rather, is going to be 3.75. So I'm just going to guess, just going to go for an internal radius for the tube of 2 foot just for the moment. Just something to hold to 3.75. There we are. And let's just, now the reason why this is quite handy over here is because I can now use it to place my wheel. So let's put that there, and then let's move it on the x-axis. Along, there's our wheel. And because it's the same outer diameter as the diameter of this, then I know that it's already sitting on the baseline. As you can see there, I'll just go into wireframe, you can see that point is sitting on the 0 height. But of course it's also very clunky as well, so we want to alter that. And actually I think I'm not far off as far as the size of the actual tyre, the width of the actual wheel, including the tyre. Let's just move that away to have a quick look. So it's from there to that inner circle, I think is what we want. Let's just try and position that just about right, but it's just about there, but it's the internal diameter is a bit too great, so I'm going to just trim it down by 1/2 inch on the radius, which of course goes the wrong way. There we are. And that's pretty good, I think. Let's have a texture correct. It's out there, but overall I think it's okay. Right, and it's 18 sides, so, well, I'm going to double that straight away. And let's have a look at that in wireframe. So it looks like a much nicer. Well, if I can take that up another 4. No, not 3. If I go up to 4T. For some reason. There we go. Let's take that. Well, I might as well just go increment it by steps. There we are, 40. Which gives me 10 round to there, to here, to here, to here. Okay. So I now have got to make, I want to make the spokes. Now I've made this wheel, and of course it's centering there. I'm just going to hide the mesh for the saddle tank. And I'm looking down, looking that way, or vertically I can look down. Where are we? Over here. And I can dispense with this shape. I don't need that anymore. And so there we are, a beginnings of the wheel. Just going to center the position, the pivot, and I'm going to put that, make sure it's on the center line just to work from, just to make it a bit easier to work from. And it now needs, I want to make a spokes for this, and the spokes are a somewhat interesting shape, and I'm going to start off with an ellipse. That's about the shape that I want, but obviously that's far too big. Let me just turn that over 90 degrees. So I'm just approximating the shape at the moment. Not going to worry too much about it. Make sure that's on the 0 point. Move on the y-axis, and with an ellipse you get the two measurements. You get the length You get the length and the width. So I'm going to bring the width down to, that's I think, sorry, there's the they're transversed here. The length is actually the width that way, 2.7, and I'm going to bring that down to 5.75 inches, and I'm going to bring the actual length down to 7 inches, not 7 feet, and not too impressed with that. I think what I need to do is to reduce the width a bit, and I'm going to reduce the length. Well, first of all, what I'm going to do, this is, to some extent, this is trial and error. It's a trial making all these errors. Right, and then let's drop that down. There's going to be 14 spokes on the wheel according to the plan. I'm going to take that down to 4 and this down to 6, and we can see the effect that's having for the outline of the, that's 4, try and get it right, 6, there we are. I think that's more or less where we want to be. And so if I extrude that, well, not 18 feet, thank you very much, 1, 2, 3, let's say 4, and needs to be a little bit more than that. It's still a bit big, so let's go back to the ellipse and go to 3.5 and just try 5. I don't still find that too much. 4 and 3. Let's have a look at the picture. So although it's pixelated, you get a pretty clear idea, an impression of those spokes, and at the moment this is still far too big. I think it's a far more I think what I'm doing wrong here is I've got the ellipse the wrong way round, which is why it's not proving to be particularly, no, not that way. I need to rotate it on the z-axis by 90 degrees. That way I can then increase this to 5, which is more as, what I'm looking at is the amount of space at the spoke base where it meets the inner part of the tyre, inner part of the wheel, joins it, so I'm going to put in some extra. I think we're alright there. Extrusion, maybe take it up by 2 inches just for the moment. That's a bit much, take it up by 1 inch. Let's centre our pivot. Okay, and then I want to centre that on the wheel. And in the extrusion I want 3 segments, and if we zoom in there we should be able to see that it is now, yes, we can see it's now in 3, there's a segment there, segment division there. So with the wheel, that's 3.25 inches there. No, I'm just getting far too clever. So what I'm going to do is move that over to centre line. That's the wrong thing to move. It's this that I want moved over to the centre line. and then we've got it is 4 foot 1 inches, so 2 foot and a half. 2 foot and a half an inch, not 2 foot 5 inches. And now edit the mesh. So I'm going to take this division, and it needs to be up about 3 inches, so I'm going to move that up to, take that down rather, to about 3 inches. Even that's probably a bit much, 0.2. It's not that I've got the 4.1, so 3.11. It's not that I'm going to do all of the curves, because you do get there's complex curves there where the spoke meets the inner part of the wheel. And again, if I just want to spread these out a bit, so and that's going in the wrong direction. It needs to be oh well, we're doing one at a time. Let's take this, and I'm going to keep an eye down here, although you can't stick with that. 18, 19, 1, 2, 1. Maybe a bit more. Let's go back and take it up to, got the right, is it? All I'm trying to do is spread these out a bit. So let's go top down, make sure I'm doing it in the right way. And I'll pick up the bottom ones. So I'm taking it out to the edge of the wheel there, which may be a bit too much, but we'll see as we change things about. And let's just get that back into position. X and Y. So position's already there. And let's have a look at our wheel with one spoke in place. And you can see that the spoke is really quite wide. It's maybe too wide. I maybe need to bring that back a bit. Yeah, I think that's too wide. So what I'm going to do is actually just alter the whole thing in one go. See if that'll do the trick. Yep, that's the one. And on the x-axis, I think. There we are. I think that looks more realistic. What I will do though is I will bring that out a bit, back out a bit, so as to exaggerate that splayed piece at the top and bottom of the spoke. Let's have a look at that one. Yeah, I think that's okay. Okay, now the awkward thing is it's got 14 spokes. So if your maths is as good as mine, which is non-existent, 14 is a really awkward number to go into. Let's just make sure we are talking the right numbers. So yeah, 14 spokes. So that's 2. Let's have a quick look. Where are we? So look at the calculator. 360 degrees divided by 14 equals 25. Well, actually that's not what we want, is it? It's got to be 360 degrees divided by 7. 51.42. Oh, great. So let's try that anyway. And let's edit clone. Okay, and on that axis, on the Z axis, so it's got to be, it's actually showing here is the Y axis, 51.42. Okay, and let's do the same here, going in the other direction. Okay, 51.42. That's 6. You can definitely see why I'm challenged with this. Hmm. .71. Let's try that. Just going to delete those. You're probably thinking, what is he up to? Surely you can work out the spoke better than this. Well, I want to show you how I'm doing this, how I normally do this, to while away happy Trainz modelling hour upon hour. 25.71. Okay, so that gives me 6. So now I'm going to do another one, and .71 is 51.42. There we are, so that gives me 8. And 25.71 is by 3 is 75. 77.2. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, that's 10. We've got 4 to go. So let's do this. That's 51.42. And then finally, that was 77.2. There we have our 14 spokes. So what else can I do in order to create the wheel? Well, there is an inner part of the wheel, and there is the tyre, or rather there's the flange. And so that's what I'll make next. I'll make the flange next. And I'm just going to clone that tube, and I'm going to change its colour, reduce its width to about 1/2 inch, its depth rather, and I'm going to keep its inner radius, and I'm going to move it back over and increase the external radius by 1.25 inches. Let's have a go in a bit. Just add an extra 1/4 inch there. I think that's enough. And move the whole thing over, center its pivot point, move the whole thing over so it's butting right up the edge there. Now the reason why I kept the radius of the inner radius of the wheel is because I want this surface here to include both, but I'm going to even change that, because one of the other things is that there is an inner section of the wheel there which I haven't allowed for, either in the spokes or the length of the spokes rather. So again, I'm going to take this and I'm going to reduce its width down to 5 inches and change its colour so I know what I'm dealing with. And I'm going to just put it back over there. There we are, okay, and then I'm going to reduce its inner radius. So I'm going to move it from this line to this line here, from this bit here to this bit here. So let's just reduce that. We'll take a ½ inch off for the moment. It needs to be quite a bit more, so 1 foot 11.5, tad more I think. Okay, and it was 2 foot and ½ an inch. 0.5. So that sets it inside there, which means some spokes are all wrong. Happy days. But I don't mind doing that because it's going to, I'm just going to repeat making those spokes. So I think the thing to do is to move them, select them all, and then I'll use them as a guide. None of the work is wasted, so I'm going to alter the mesh. I'm actually just going to move it in by eye. There we go. There we are. And then just need to clone that one, and I need to minus 2571. And the next one is minus 5142. .2. I may replace these again. So that's clone. Okay. Because 5142. Because I may just texture one and then repeat this cloning process all the way around. 2571. I think 2 decimal places is adequate for these. Let's just remove those. Okay, so let's have a look down here. And I've got to redo them again because I've made these too wide. So what I might do is this red inner part, I may increase its width slightly, and I think I see the issue anyway because it wasn't centered on the, there we are. How does that look? Well, that looks okay, and the spokes are just about where they should be. Yep, get rid of that, and just looking down there. Okay, so that's basically my wheel, how I'm going to do the wheel. Now I'm going to split these meshes up as well, because the actual tyre of the wheel, that is this surface here and that surface there, I want to be more shiny. So I use my textures, my standard textures frames, which has a whole load of different textures on it, but it's a small image, and then a shinier version of frames, and I use the shinier version of frames for that. So that's making the wheel. I think that's enough to show you in this part of the my series of tutorials, and I hope it will give you an idea of the way I approach this, and I'll finish it off and then texture it in the next tutorial, and then replicate it to make up the 3 wheel sets that I need for this really lovely locomotive. I really do very much like this locomotive, very much indeed. Yeah, be a good addition. So there we are, that's the end of this tutorial. If you've got any comments, questions or otherwise, please do post them. If you haven't subscribed already, please do subscribe to my YouTube channel, and watch out for the next one.